All right, guys, what we're going to cover in this video is bad data. So when you get all of your data, all of your facts that are gathered together, you're going to be getting a lot of bad data. So information that is just completely useless. Like I had already kind of mentioned, we are only using certain pieces of information, and a lot of it we're just ignoring for the most part, right? However, on top of that, there's going to be some of the information that we're going to want to use. We look at it, it's going to be like an annual revenue listings that seem good. However, it's actually bad data. So the information is not useful for us and we have to remove it. Okay. So this is something that I explain to every single one of my clients that I've worked with in the past is that when you're working with me, I'm expecting you to be doing this on a full-time basis, right? I expect you to create an Airbnb business. I expect you to find homes and manage them, rent them, buy them, and turn them into full-time Airbnbs. And you're not just trying to do this where you buy a second home and you're renting it out here and there, right? I expect this to be something you're turning into a business. Now, why do I explain all of that? The reason I explain all of that is because we only want to use information of people who are also doing the same thing, right? It's not helpful for us to get information about somebody who rents out their spare bedroom or somebody who rents out shared rooms, right? So that's actually the first thing I want to get into. Now, I've created a whole list of all the different things it's sort of a checklist to how to avoid bad data, so information that is not useful for us. As I go through each one of these, I'm going to be explaining them more in depth. So you're going to want to take some notes here for sure, because I just have the bullet points, right? And I've also pulled up examples that you can see actual examples of what I'm talking about here, so you can get an idea. And you need to know this information because when you're going through this profit map and then diving deep at to do a property analysis, you need to know this information so that you don't get tripped up. Now, I've talked about this quite a few times before, and if you haven't heard it, there was once a time where I almost signed two $7,000 a month leases for these absolutely beautiful new builds that were going up right across the street from the big house in Michigan, Ann Arbor, right? And the data that I was looking at was bad data. It was incorrect information. I'm going to teach you how I figured that out, right? So that you're not going to run into that exact same mistake. And AirDNA, if you ever see this video, AirDNA is kind of a little shithead because there's a whole section of their Market Minder app, right, that kind of highlights these bad listings, and they call them their top performers, but really it's just bad data, and it's really going to trip you up and screw you up. But there are in those top performers, there are some that are real. I'm going to help you identify what's real, what's useful, and what's fake, what's bad data, what's not accurate. Okay. So let's get into it here, and let's try and understand this as much as we possibly can. Like I said, take notes. I am going to be covering a lot. I'm going to give a lot of examples and try and speak about this as best I possibly can, okay? So first off, the entire home. Now, this is something I already mentioned. When you're on Airbnb, right, you can rent out your entire home. You can rent out a private room, or you can do shared rooms. Now, we're only going to be doing entire homes because I expect you to be doing this on a full-time basis. And there's really only money in the entire home if you're going to be building a business out of this. Now, if you want to make side income off of your property, off of like something that you rent out for yourself to live in, that's a whole other scenario. You wouldn't have been buying this course if you didn't if you were planning on doing that, right? So we're only looking at homes that are listings that are entire homes, and I'll show you the very first thing we do with that. So this is the data. I most likely have already explained this to you. If I haven't, we're going to be going through it for the first time in this course. But this is how the data is going to come through for you when you get it, right? And I've explained that these are the different data points up here, and each row is a different listing, okay? So the very first thing that we want to do is actually I remove all of the listings that aren't the entire home. So you can see here there's a room type, which is entire home. And if you scroll down far enough, you actually will get to ones that are just private room within this data set. Now, I'm removing this for you, so you don't have to worry about this, but I'm just telling you that this is one of the pieces of information that we need to remove, okay? That's one of the first bad pieces of data. Now, the next one is over 300 days. What does that mean exactly? So if I haven't explained this yet, I'm once again explaining it for the first time here. Days available. Days available should actually be called days tracked. And this is the way that AirDNA actually gets their information. You can go directly onto AirDNA and read how they pull the information. I'll most likely pull that up at one point in this course and explain that. But within days tracked, or sorry, days available. What this really means is days tracked. Okay, so AirDNA has an algorithm that goes into every single Airbnb listing, I think on a weekly basis, and checks their calendar. It might be daily. Daily would actually make more sense. And they go in on a daily basis and they look at the calendar. If the calendar is completely vacant, so there's nobody has booked the home, they're going to record that, and then they're going to record how much the nightly rate is for every single one of those nights, and also what the cleaning fee is. Okay, that's what the algorithm does, and it does this on a million, like literally millions of listings every single day. And then it comes back in the next day and it reviews the calendar to see if anything has changed. And so if somebody came by and booked out an entire week, then AirDNA now says, okay, there was a booking there, and we know what the nightly rate was the day before and the cleaning fee. So odds are they probably booked out at that rate, and so that therefore is the amount that that Airbnb host has made, right? And they do this every single day. They're coming in every single day and they're actually tracking these calendars. And so after a whole 365 days, they know how much that person has made over the entire year, right? And so that's how they're able to come up with these annual revenue numbers, which is very important. However, if they have not been tracking throughout the entire year and that listing has only been up for, say, 6 months, then they're only going to have information on the past 6 months, right? So it's very, very key. You need to know that, because you could look at a listing and say, oh, this listing has done terrible, it's not doing really well. Well, maybe it's only been up for half a year, right? Now, another thing that people say here, and I'll show you this, right? So you can see this is days tracked. I want to point this out before I get to my next point. So days tracked, right? This one has been up and running for 283 days. It's missing under 100 days, which is about 3-4 months, right? So it could be useful if you keep that in mind. It could be useful, but it's not great, okay? However, this one here has only been tracked for 40 days, so a little over a month. So the revenue on this one is as you can see over here, is only $3,000, right? They've only been tracking this for 40 days. Now, I want to here's a better example here of 144 days, right? This one's been almost half a year, kind of under a half year. This one's probably closer to half a year. Some of you might be thinking, well, why don't I just take that number, right? So it's only been up for about a half a year. So why don't I go over to the revenue and I just double that revenue number? And if I double that revenue number, I get what they're going to do over the full year. That's not how it works. And the reason it's not how it works is because seasonality, right? So if a home has been listed during the past 6 months, and those past 6 months were the summer, you can't expect them to make the same amount of money during the winter that they did in the summer, or peak season and slow season, right? Because summer's not always the peak season in some places. So peak season and slow season, like depending on the actual location. So that there is why you can't just take the number and duplicate it, because of seasonality. And so then therefore we need homes that have been tracked for a total of 300 days or more. Sometimes I go down to about 275, 265, right? So I know I've got like a 3 month-ish, 3 months that I'm missing. And I can kind of reason with that, but I do like to stay above 300 days, because then you're only missing about two months there. A listing that's been up for 365 days is amazing. It's great data because it's the entire annual revenue, and we need the annual revenue to be able to put it up against our annual expenses. That's something I probably should have mentioned right off the bat. So when they're tracking throughout the entire year, it's going to get the annual revenue. We need the annual revenue to go up against the annual expenses. Otherwise, we're taking only part of a year revenue and a full year expenses, and the math is obviously wrong when you do that, okay? Now, when you're also going to be going through this data, the next thing you're going to run to is links that don't open. So this is very simple. This row right here is all of the listings, right? And what will happen is sometimes you'll come across a link, and that link actually just won't open to anything. It'll just be a dead link, and then you can't review the listing itself, which is not helpful for us, because we need to be able to see what the listing actually looked like, because once there's a bunch of information about the listing that we have to try and figure out. And we're going to get into that at a later video. But what I'm just showing you right now is sometimes what's going to happen is you're going to open up one of these links and it's going to come and bring you right back to the home page. This is useless. We don't want that. We need to be able to see how the listing is actually doing. Okay, so it's a very simple one. Even if the data looks really great and you want to track it, you just can't, because you don't know all the rest of the information about the listing. Once again, we're going to get into that later. Now, another one here is the listing making significantly more than others? This right here is all of the revenue for all the listings that are in the lower Greenville area that are 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and this is all the revenue organized from highest to lowest. Now, whenever I look at this, I can instantly see that this one is doing significantly more than the others. and the other ones are doing an average around this dollar amount, right? So that's a nice average. That's some consistency. That's probably what you would make if you were to go into that area. However, we have this one-off that's doing really well. So instantly, usually when you see this, it's usually just bad data. It's wrong information. It didn't get tracked properly, right? And so if I go and click that link and I try and open it up, take a look at it, once again, we're getting redirected back to the home page. And so therefore it is not good data. Okay, that's going to happen often. So don't get excited when you see that really high revenue up there and you're like, oh, I can do that well, and you don't actually go and open up the link. That would be a big mistake. We don't want to do that. Okay. Now you're probably you're probably wondering at this moment, like, why are there so many dead links? Well, people do Airbnb for a bunch of different reasons, right? You got some people who are doing Airbnb because they want to do it like us. They want to do it full time. They want to create a business out of it. So a lot of people just have second homes. Some people are just trying it out and they're kind of getting a feel for it, and then they realize they hate it and they don't want to do it, and they close it down. Some people are, they maybe it's a place that they stay for the winter but not for the summer, and vice versa, right? Like snowbirds, and so they have it up some time of the years and not the other time of the year. Now the reason that is, so let's use that example right there. So let's say you had a snowbird who goes to Florida every single year, and they stay in their home during the summer, but they rent it out during the winter. What's happening on AirDNA side with their algorithm, and they're tracking this, is that the person who's staying there, they stay throughout the entire summer, and so they block off their entire calendar. Now AirDNA kind of has this issue where if you have a listing that's up all the time, but you come in and you block off the calendar, their algorithm really can't tell a difference between you blocking it off or somebody booking it. There's some cases where they can, but in a lot of cases they can't, okay? And so what's happening is I'm blocking off the entire summer, and the rates and everything, AirDNA thinks that I actually booked it out for the entire summer. So I got 100% occupancy for 6 months at the highest peak season. And so then they're tracking this, and then it shows up in the revenue as this really high revenue number, but it's not, right? And so it's actually like the wrong number, because that person actually is only listing it out during the winter, and they have it closed during the summer. And so obviously that number is going to look a lot better than everyone else's because it's 100% occupancy at a higher rate throughout the entire summer. So that's not the case, right? And that's kind of the reason that this happens, and you got to keep that in mind, okay? So I just want to make sure that's understood before I go through. Now, the next one we want to go through is less than 20 reviews. This is one that is a very quick way to figure out if it's bad data or not, because typically if somebody is renting out their home on a full-time basis, right, they're going to be getting reviews, multiple reviews every single month, right? So even if you got just 2 reviews every single month throughout the entire year, you're at 24, all right? So if you have only like 10 reviews throughout the entire year, and it says you've been over 300 days, but you have less than 10 reviews, that doesn't really add up, okay? So let me show you a quick example of that, which I have right over here. I apologize, guys. I kind of have to jump back and forth and find where I put all these examples every single time that I come in. But I believe that one is going to be right here. Am I right? Yeah. So take a look. We have our number of reviews, and we have our revenue number. Okay. So I realized as I was going through this, I can give you 2 examples. So the first one, you can see there's 8 reviews, but the person made $243,000. Instantly, I know for a fact that just can't be the case. It just can't be the case, because you can't get 8 reviews and make $243,000. It's not how this business works. It's not normal. The only way that this is possible is if like Vacasa or Turnkey is actually renting out this place, and the majority of the time they're renting it out on a different platform like Booking.com, Expedia, or their own website, and they're only getting a few of the reviews through AirDNA. Even then, it's still a little iffy, and I really don't like to track that data. But if I click this and open it up, this is the one that actually, yep, okay, so it opened up. Now, instantly, like, this is a great home. It's actually funny. This is the person I'm going to be giving an example of later on for something else, which I will get into. But as you can see, they only have 12 reviews here, right? And it's saying that they made $243. I actually probably should just explain the next point because it'll help me explain why it's showing $243,000. Okay, so I'm going to jump right now. I apologize, guys, to one home split into multiple listings. Perfect. So this is actually the second one, the next one in line that I wanted to explain, which kind of ties in to explain why it has less than 20 reviews. So I'm not going to use this one as the example, but I'm actually going to use this one here, which is by the exact same host. As you can see here, we got Lee and over here, Lee, right? So this guy, he's got a bunch of Airbnbs. And what's happening here, why the data is showing like he's making a whole bunch of money and all this, whatever, right? You can see this is a 16 guests, 7 bedrooms, 14 beds, 7 baths, like absolutely massive place. But when you look at the home, you can tell it's not a mansion, right? It kind of looks like a multi-unit building. And so what's happening here is this guy, Lee, owns the entire building, okay? He owns the entire building, just like this one over here. He owns the entire building, and he has multiple listings. So he has one listing that is for the entire place, and that one's going to be booked out at a really high rate. Like the nightly rate's going to be really high because it's this entire listing, right? However, at the same time, for the exact same building, as you can see here, he also has another listing that breaks up it's for one of the units within the building, right? So this is a multi-unit building. There's multiple units within this building, and he's got multiple listings and then one for the entire building. So as you can see here, this is one of the units. And then you come over here and you can see again the building. That's another one of the units, right? And this one's a 4-bedroom. That one's a 3-bedroom. It totals up to a total of 7 bedrooms. And so what's happening? This is one of the errors with AirDNA, is that the way that Lee has this set up is that when one of these smaller units gets booked, this one automatically gets blocked, right? Because obviously if one of the units are booked out, then he can't rent out the entire place. So if one of these guys gets booked, this one gets blocked. Now AirDNA's algorithm can't figure that out. They don't know that this is actually just being blocked by this other thing. They actually think it's being booked out, right? And so that's why you see these huge $243,000 a year places being made, but only have 15, 8 reviews, whatever it may be. It's because these guys have their nightly rate at $1,000+, but really they're getting rented out for $400, and this one's getting blocked, and so AirDNA is tracking that as it's actually being blocked or booked, right? And so that's why just using the number of reviews is a really quick indicator to say, no, it's probably not right? Because as an Airbnb host, you know that on a full-time basis, you generally need about more than 15 reviews for this to actually work. Okay, so I hope that makes sense, right? And I'm glad we were able to explain both of those together. Now, another great example of this is the calendar isn't spotty, okay? The next data point that I want to go through here to point out if something is bad data or not is that the calendar is not spotty. So if I click on this link here, this is sort of a checklist item that you want to go through. You'll click on this. Now, this isn't a good example. This is an example of a spotty calendar, right? So as you can see, there's random bookings all over the place. We can see that, the weekends are booked out, but the weekdays aren't. That's very consistent. That's a normal thing. And so if you were just looking at the calendar, you would think, oh, this is good, right? But we already know everything else about this listing, and that's why we know we have multiple different points of looking for bad data so we can confirm if a listing has real data or not, right? Real information or not. But what I'm trying to stay here with the spotty calendar is in a situation where it is bad data, the calendar will look very clean, okay? So like all of September will be booked out, maybe all of October is open, and then they'll have like, all of November is blocked off. Like you'll see that it's very clean, okay? But what we want to see spotty bookings all over the place, because that tells me it's a real listing. It's actually being booked out on a regular basis, because that's how it works. That's how AirDNA and booking, and if you have an Airbnb business, you just know these things, okay? So you want the calendar to be spotty. That is a very key indicator that it's a real listing. Mind you, in that example, it was spotty, but we knew the other points, and so that's how we were able to qualify that data as bad data, right? Now, review of the past 12 months. Okay, so this is saying that the reviews from the past 12 months are not consistent. So once again, I'm actually going to be able to use this listing here. I could probably actually use the other one as well. But what I would do is I'd go down to the actual reviews, and I would see if they have reviews for every single month, right? Or 1 or 2 at a minimum reviews for every single month. So right off the bat, this is September 16th. So there should be some reviews for September, but there's not, right? There's no reviews for June, and you can kind of see that it's really spotty. Like we got 1 for August, 2 for August, 1 for July, and then all the way through to May. So if this were going to be renting out full time, You're telling me that you just went through the entire summer and only got 3 reviews? It just doesn't add up. Doesn't make sense, right? So once again, that's a quick indicator to tell you that it's bad data, right? This isn't a true full-time listing, which is what we want, okay? And then the last thing is actually just a bad listing. So this is an example that people maybe don't think of right off the bat, and it kind of took me a while to realize as well, is that I'm I'm a good host, right? I'm a good host, and I know how to list, I know how to market, I know how to put things together, I know how to show my home well, design it well, I know how to get good reviews, all of those sorts of things, right? And so I would consider myself to be a good host who knows how to market their listing well. And I consider if you're going through this as well, you're also going to be a good host who knows how to take proper photos and list your home well, right? And so if we come across a host who has been doing everything full time throughout the entire year, and we checked all the reviews, the number of days, all these different things, and it shows us like, yeah, this person's actually a real host. However, they have a really bad listing. I consider that bad data because I'm not going to do that. And generally what happens is their revenue is significantly lower than everybody else's. Significantly lower. And you'll notice this once you're going through yourself. Really bad marketing means you make significantly less money. And I'm not going to do that. So why would I track that? Even if it is a full-time listing, it's just a bad example. So let me show you what I mean here. This here is a full-time listing. I reviewed it, I looked at it. Right off the bat, you can see that the photos don't look really well. And just to kind of give you an example, this is what a good listing looks like, right? This is what we're going to be doing. This looks really nice, right? This one does not. Right off the bat, you can tell. But when you open it up, you can see obviously on an angle the furniture and everything is decent. It looks fine, right? But just the photos are awful. They're god awful. They put together the home well, but just took god awful photos. And on top of that, they have like 10 photos. So you can barely even see anything within this listing. Right? Now, that's an example of a bad listing that I would actually not track. A little fun note here is that this is actually the type of homes that I look for when I go and rent on Airbnb because they're always priced significantly lower than everybody else. I can see by looking at these photos that this is a pretty decent place. You got a good kitchen, you got a decent couch, the home seemed to be made well, and this person's a super host, and they've got 135 reviews. In my head, I go, this person's probably a good host, but they're making significantly less money than everybody else, which means that their nightly rates are going to be a lot lower than everybody, but they still have a good product, a good home, good listing, right? That's a little side note for you, a quick way to save some money if you're going to be going on Airbnb and booking things out. So, anyways, that is all of the different checklists that we want to go through when we're trying to look for bad data. And so that you understand that we need to remove these guys because if we're tracking and using their information for us, we're going to be fucked. Literally just going to be fucked because you're going to be looking at somebody like this guy here who says he's making, AirDNA says they're making $243,000 throughout the entire year, but we know that that's not true, right? If I were to go to this guy's his account, I'm going to see all the other listings that are combined with this 8-bedroom, you know what I mean? The additional units have been broken up. Most likely I can see from here, it's probably a 4-bedroom and a 4-bedroom, right? Anyways, so you get the point, you get the idea. Bad data is something we have to remove. It's a part of the process. You need to understand how to avoid bad data, how to make sure you're not running into it, things like that. I hope this has been useful. I apologize for the long video, but you really need to figure those things out as you're going, okay? All right, guys. On to the next one.